Hey folks, welcome back to Only the Best Fantasy Novels. My name is Robin, and today I want to talk about a book that's been on my TBR well over God's a decade and change, and I finally got around to reading it, and it was a trip. It was a trip and a half. As you saw in the title, the book I'm talking about is The Bone Doll's Twin by Lynn Flewelling, and holy crap, this is probably one of the most unique, one of the most interesting fantasy novels I've read in a fair bit, probably since I read Simon Jimenez's The Spirit Cuts Through Water. This is how far off the beaten path we're talking about. So first and foremost, before I even start talking about the book, let me just give a breakdown of what this story is about. So we have the Kingdom of Scala, which has been traditionally ruled by a line of matrilineal queens. Because many centuries ago, a king received a divine prophecy, and the prophecy was essentially that any of his, so long as a female heir of his bloodline rules, the land of Scala will basically prosper. There won't be war, there won't be drought, there won't be famine, there won't be plague, that kind of thing. The land will prosper. It will enjoy divine bounty, essentially. So this was centuries ago, and the line of queens has ruled pretty much unbroken since that time. The land has enjoyed a great sense of peace and prosperity, and as usual, prosperity and peace brings stagnation. It brings complacency, and that's kind of what happens. Now, one of the interesting things about this line is that one of the things that plagues the hereditary line of queens is insanity, and it kind of comes to a head in the current queen's rule. Like she's just balls to the wall nuts. She does some pretty dark stuff, and by popular acclaim, the people, naturally having forgotten about this prophecy, they back her son, who basically usurps the throne. And soon after he usurps the throne, everything that the land loses its divine bounty, and war begins to threaten. Plague, famine, drought become a thing again. The king moves to protect his line and secure the throne for his heir by essentially starting to murder all the female relatives who may have a claim on the throne. The people begin to the people, and especially the priests of the god who made this prophecy, they begin to, as the land slips further and further into dealing with all these situations that they were previously protected from, they begin to remember this prophecy and whisper of this prophecy, and it forces the king to just become a bit more tyrannical. It doesn't help that he suffers from a bit of the hereditary madness. So that's kind of the background situation we have when the king's sister is giving birth to fraternal twins, a boy and a girl, and unbeknownst to him, they think it's one child. So she's giving birth to these fraternal twins, and a plan is hatched to save the girl, to become a future queen, and to basically restore the peace and prosperity of the land. And it's a dark plan. It's a pretty violent, it involves some very dark magic. And essentially what happens is the male twin dies, and the female, her body becomes transmuted, and she basically they transform her body into the body of the boy that was murdered. In the process, the magic went a bit awry, and the spirit of the prince, who died, the twin, he becomes a demon poltergeist that starts to haunt the keep, and starts to destroy things and attack people and that kind of thing. The 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 king's sister, realizing what was done, is driven completely insane, and her husband can only watch this and pretty much disassociate and curl in on himself as a result. So that's kind of the scenario we have when we are introduced to Prince Tobin, who was born a girl and through dark magic transformed into a boy. Needless to say, like this is a very dark story, pretty much right from the get go. Like Prince Tobin, the book essentially covers the first portion of Tobin's life, like from birth straight through to puberty, and it just paints a very dark, bleak picture. It's essentially Garmengastian in the way that we have this keep with this insane mother. The keep has pretty much fallen to ruin because the husband has their father has pretty much just lost interest in anything after what happened to his wife, and the sacrifice he made of his children for the greater good of the land. We have the demon poltergeist just going around and tearing things up to the point where the few remaining servants who stayed at the castle, they're pretty much just treated like a painting, a wall painting, part of the decoration at this point. And needless to say, growing up in this kind of environment, Prince Tobin is more than a little traumatized. So, yeah, that's a pretty intense place to start the story, and it only gets worse from there. Like this book is pretty much like a gothic horror novel set in an epic fantasy setting. Like it's messed up, and it only gets more and more messed up as things progress. It's a very deeply character driven, as these type of stories tend to be. There are the few occasional things that do happen, but they mainly happen in the context of what it means for the characters and the consequences of it. Like at the end of the day, the princess in this is pretty well hidden in this prince's body. She doesn't know that he's a she, so she grows thinking that she's a he, and it's just messed up. It's just a dark, messed up story from start to finish. Like we have different things that happen, but honestly, they don't matter much. Like it just reading about this situation and what happens to the characters as the story unfolds slowly but steadily over the course of this little over a decade. It was just engrossing in just how weird and strange it is. And of course, the circumstances of Prince Tobin's birth is just the start of the madness that this child has to go through. Like, oof, it's intense. It's not a fun book to read. Like, I shouldn't say it's not a fun book to read, but like, if you're one of those people who's concerned about like trigger warnings, and like reading certain content that could traumatize and so, everything is in here. Like everything you could think of, it's in here. Avoid like the plague. Like this book is terrible, and the thing is, like, what makes it all work is Lynn Flewelling is just an amazing writer. She's a really good writer. Like she really sinks her claws into you right from the get-go. Like this is already a messed up situation, and her writing just spectacularly captures you and just has this story sink it hooks into you from the get-go. Like, you can't stop reading this. It's dark enough that you're horrified, but not so dark that you're sick and to the point you need to stop reading this, you have to DNF and that kind of thing. It is very, very wonderfully done. Very terrifyingly wonderfully done. Like, it's amazing. Like, in terms of the actual plot of this book, there isn't much of one. We are following we are pretty much following the life of a child for the majority of it. There are a few things that go on in the background as the adults, the few adults who are aware of the situation, they start to kind of set things in place for the eventual reveal and that sort of thing. But of course, life has many twists and turns. Things do happen that they don't plan for, and that kind of dictates the climax of the book. There is also the wild card of the mother being completely insane by the situation when she doesn't know what happened. She doesn't know what was done to her children. She just knows that her mind just broke that night, and she essentially becomes a wild card in the entire situation. So it's crazy, like wonderfully crazy. But yeah, the book is very much a slow burn read, as you would expect from a gothic fantasy. You're meant to more marinate in it, and there isn't so much as a climax as there is a sequence of events with a relatively big capstone, and then that's it. Like, the book doesn't feel like it increases in pace. It maintains like the same steady pace throughout, that kind of thing. Yeah, like, just thinking back on this book, it's still shocking to me. Like, just, this is dark, man. This is really dark. I enjoyed it immensely. Like, any story that could like pull this much emotion from me at this point is one I'm very happy I read, and I will sing its praises non-stop. Like, you guys, if anybody had made it this far into this video, you need to read this book. This book is sick. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about this book at this point. I'll leave the rest to be read and find out. If you're a fan of absolutely great horror stories, absolutely great fantasy, character-driven fantasy, just wonderful stories in general, you need to check this book out. It's absolutely worth it. And if you've made it this far in the video, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.